Korea versus UK.
We're British and we love South Korea.
So this series compares our two favourite countries in the world, South Korea and the United Kingdom.
This isn't a competition or pitting them against each other. We're just here to compare and contrast different topics related to South Korea and the UK.
So make a cup of tea and settle yourself down for another episode of
Korea versus UK. This episode, music. You know how much we love K-pop, and of course we're fans of British music too.
So let's take a look at the journey British and Korean music has had from way back right up until today.
First, the old stuff. When you hear the term K-pop, you probably don't think of this. But this is Trot, sometimes referred to as Pongjak, and it's technically the original Korean pop. Originating from the early 20th century while Korea was under Japanese colonial rule, Trot took influence from Korean, Japanese, European and US music and was identifiable by its 2-beat repetitive rhythm and vocal inflections. Because of what was going down when Trot came about, there has been debate over whether Trot is more Korean or Japanese, but we'll stay out of that discussion because that's not our beef. It's thought its name came from the latter end of foxtrot, a ballroom dance sharing the same 2-beat rhythm.
In 1930s Britain, American jazz and swing music led to the formation of British dance bands, providing popular music to be played on the radio and at social occasions. During World War II, the Royal Air Force wanted to raise morale, and several British dance bands were formed to do this. The Squadronaires, Skyrockets and singers like Vera Lynn would perform at dances and concerts for servicemen to enjoy, and their music was also broadcast on the BBC for the general public.
In the mid-1900s, Trot became more westernised and remained popular with young people. After the war, Korea was pretty poor, and some singers found a good way of making money was by catering to the preferences of American soldiers stationed in Korea. What started as performances at US Army clubs soon paved the way to performing overseas and gaining global recognition, all the while being exposed to and influenced by more and more new Western music styles, such as rhythm and blues and rock and roll. You probably know that in 2017, BTS won their first Billboard Music Award, but what you may not know is that back in 1959, the Kim sisters became the first Korean musicians to release an album in the US pop market, with their cover of Charlie Brown getting to number 8 in the Billboard music charts.
Back in the UK in the late 50s, a new culture of groups was emerging in major British cities such as Liverpool, Manchester, Birmingham, that's us, and London. Beat bands formed with influence from American bands, and in the 60s, the infamous Beatles saw massive success in the UK. While the UK music charts had previously been dominated by American artists, or British covers of American songs, this was a huge turning point, and many Liverpool acts, such as Jerry and the Pacemakers, The Searchers, and Cilla Black, swept over the charts. Successes from Birmingham were the Spencer Davis Group and the Moody Blues, while London brought us the Rolling Stones, the Dave Clark Five, and the Yardbirds. Manchester artists included Freddie and the Dreamers, Herman's Hermits and the Hollies.
This was the explosive start to the British invasion, where after all this time, after so much US influence, British music was taking over America. In April 1964, the Beatles held the top 5 spots in the Billboard Hot 100 charts simultaneously, and many other British bands followed suit, with a massive list of Billboard chart-topping singles coming from Britain. This also directly influenced Korea, and in 1962, the first Korean rock band was formed, the Ad4, led by Shin Jung-hyun, aka the godfather of Korean rock. Their first song, The Woman in the Rain, was similar in style to the Beatles' early music. The Ad4 was part of a whole new wave of group sound, with bands such as Koreana, formerly the Arirang Singers, and the Key Boys popping up and making their mark.
During the 80s and 90s, Trot quickly lost popularity for being too outdated and was overtaken by dance music. However, popular musicians of the new, shiny 21st century gave Trot a well-needed boost. Both young Trot musicians and K-pop idols made the genre more appealing to the younger generation. Moving on to more modern times, the 90s were all about the boy bands and girl bands in both Korea and the UK. It's widely said that modern K-pop began with the formation of Sotaejian boys in 1992, and they began the first generation. People often describe K-pop in generations, so K-pop fans have probably heard this term before. The first generation began with Sotaejian boys in 1992, and it also included artists like God, SES, BoA, and TVXQ. These artists were all inspired by Western pop, hip-hop, and R&B.
In Britain, the charts were dominated by pop groups like Take That and the Spice Girls. Britpop bands were also a huge standout success for British music in the 90s, of course including bands like Blur and Oasis. But pop wasn't the only popular genre. There were big electronic rock bands like The Prodigy and Chemical Brothers, and British soul and folk music also became more popular at this time.
As well as K-pop being born in the 90s, Korea was also enjoying a revival of rock music, from bands like Crying Nut and No Brain, and later in the 90s, new bands like Rocks were popular, as well as the Geeks, who introduced punk to Korea, and indie music also became popular from the 90s through to current day.
Into the new millennium in the UK, we saw success from artists like Amy Winehouse and Adele, but a lot of British pop stars came from talent shows like Pop Idol and The X Factor, including Girls Aloud in the early millennium, and into the teens The X Factor produced One Direction and Little Mix. The new millennium in Korea saw the second generation of K-pop begin, with the most popular artists including Super Junior, Big Bang, Girls' Generation, 21 and Wonder Girls, and yeah, plenty of these groups are still active to this day.
K-pop's global success has slowly been building since the teens. In 2011, Big Bang won at the MTV European Music Awards, and in 2012 was when K-pop really hit global success after Psy's Gangnam Style went viral on an international scale. This caused other groups active at the same time to also benefit from the wave, such as the Wonder Girls and Girls' Generation, both releasing English songs in an attempt to break America.
Now looking at what's popular right now in the UK and Korea. Here in the UK, British artists in the charts right now include George Ezra, Little Mix, Calvin Harris, Jess Glynne, Clean Bandit, Ed Sheeran and Dua Lipa, to name just a few. Of course, the UK charts also has lots of global artists, mainly American artists with music from the likes of Ariana Grande, Drake and Cardi B. In the last 10 years or so, the UK has seen much more solo artists than groups. There's only ever a select few girl bands or boy bands at one time, which is totally different to the Korean music scene, mainly K-pop, which is mainly boy groups and girl groups, and much less solo artists.
Over in Korea, popular artists in the charts right now include BTS, Blackpink, Shawn, Red Velvet, Zico, Twice, Mamamoo, and Idol. K-pop groups like BTS, EXO, and Red Velvet are often described as the third generation of K-pop. Some people do talk about fourth and fifth generations, but there's no set rule about when the generations begin or end, or which artists go into them. It's just personal opinion, but that's the general idea.
Unlike the UK charts, which sometimes has more global artists than British artists at one time, it appears in South Korea, according to the Gaon chart, that global artists are listened to but aren't as important as Korean artists. The highest charted global artist at this current time is Camila Cabello with Havana, but that's only at 31 in the charts.
On a personal note, I heard that Koreans don't like K-pop. I heard it both from YouTubers who lived in Korea and also from people when we were in Korea. But despite them saying this, all the shops that you go into play K-pop and the charts show that K-pop is popular. So this is just my personal opinion, but it does seem like K-pop is more popular in Korea than people say.
In terms of K-pop's popularity growing, it's fair to say that BTS has pushed it one step further with their huge amount of success in America. Last year, in 2017, they became the first K-pop group to win at the Billboard Music Awards and began performing at events like the American Music Awards, The Ellen Show, The Late Late Show, just to name a few.
So what about Korea and the UK's relationship when it comes to music? Does South Korea listen to British music, and does the UK listen to Korean music? Based on online research, British artists like Ed Sheeran, Coldplay and Adele are particularly popular in Korea. Lots of British artists also include Korea when they're on world tours.
So Koreans appreciate British music and we love Korean music straight back. A few years ago, Little Mix released their debut hit Wings, and all the girls sang in Korean. Recently, Dua Lipa, who is huge at the moment, revealed that she was collaborating with Blackpink on a song, and BTS also just became the first K-pop group to enter the UK singles charts with Idol. And when it comes to Korean artists visiting the UK, we've seen so much more of it recently in the past few years, from all genres like K-pop and K-hip hop, including London on their world tours, and G-Dragon even came to our town, Birmingham.
We hope both the UK and Korea's appreciation for each other's music continues to grow in the future.
Now to see if you've been listening. We've got 2 questions for you, one about Korea and one about the UK. Write your answers in the comments section below, and the first correct person will get a shout out at the start of the next Korea vs UK video.
First, your question about Korea. Trot is known as the original Korean pop, but what ballroom dance does Trot get its name from?
Here's your question about the UK. The Spice Girls was one of the pop groups that dominated the UK charts in the 90s, but what was the name of the other pop group we mentioned?
Write your answers below and you could get a shout out on next month's episode of Korea vs UK.
We have new videos every Saturday, so don't forget to subscribe and we'll see you soon. Bye!